Kia ora tamariki mā, and welcome back to The Word. In God's rescue plan, we learnt about a guy named Moses. Moses' life was filled with adventure. Some parts of his journey were so awesome, but others were really hard and sometimes scary. Let's recap. Moses and his whānau were a part of God's family, the Israelites. And when he was a baby, they were slaves living in Egypt. The Egyptian ruler, Pharaoh, didn't like the fact that the Israelites were growing in number and decided that the best way to stop God's family from getting any bigger was to work them really, really hard and to kill their baby boys. Moses' mum had a plan to save him. She made a special waterproof basket and put Moses inside and set him afloat on the massive river. God protected Moses, and his little basket came to rest beside the Egyptian palace, and Pharaoh's own daughter found him and decided to adopt him and raise him as her own son. Moses grew up in the palace as a prince, but he always knew that he was different. He looked at how his family, the Israelites, were being treated, and he didn't like it at all. This led him to making a really bad decision, and because of that bad decision, he spent the next 40 years hiding out in the desert in a place called Midian. Nowadays, we call that place Saudi Arabia. He had made a new life for himself in Midian. Moses smiled to himself as he remembered how events unfolded 40 years earlier. He was on the run and had stopped at a well, which was where people used to get their water from. While he was resting, a group of young girls and women came to fill their buckets up with water. But as they came, some shepherds tried to frighten them away. They wanted to get to use the well for themselves and for their sheep, and they didn't want to wait in line while the girls got theirs. Moses saw what was happening, and he stood up to defend the girls and chase the shepherds away, reminding them their behavior was rude and they needed to wait their turn. As Moses looked at the groups of girls and women again, he realized they were a family, and that even though they'd been frightened by what had happened, they were so grateful for his help. They got their water and they headed home to tell their dad what had happened. Their dad wanted to meet Moses, and eventually Moses married one of the daughters. Her name was Zipporah, and Moses thought she was the most beautiful woman in the world. It wasn't long before they had a son, and then another one. Moses' heart was full and happy. He felt so blessed. One day, while he was out watching his sheep, just a normal-as day for him, the weirdest thing happened. Moses noticed a bush which looked like it was on fire, but it didn't burn up. That's strange, right? He walked over to investigate, and what happened next he would never forget. The voice of God spoke to him from the bush and said, "Moses, Moses." Yes, here I am. God spoke again and said, "Don't come any closer. You're standing on a very special place. It's holy ground, so take your sandals off." Moses quickly obeyed and then listened as God talked to him about what was happening with his whānau back in Egypt and about how he needed Moses to carry out a plan to set them free. Moses was like, "I can't do that. What if the people don't believe that you sent me? What if I can't speak clearly? What if Pharaoh won't listen?" Moses had so many doubts and concerns, but he also knew in his heart that when God comes and speaks to you from a burning bush, surely that means he's gonna go with you, right? Moses was still not confident in himself or his abilities, but he trusted God and he followed his instructions. It wasn't easy. Pharaoh didn't listen to him. He did not want to set the Israelites free. But God used Moses and moved in power each time he spoke. Eventually, Pharaoh let God's family go, and Moses led them towards the land God had promised. His family was finally free. As lifelong followers of Jesus, Moses sets us a great example of what it means to be meek. Being meek doesn't mean being weak. It means being willing to listen to God and then being ready to serve, to give, and to share with those who needed Him. If God speaks to you, are you ready to listen? How do you think He might ask you to serve others?